the Lakers and the Clippers, the Battle of LA continued yesterday. The Clippers routed the Lakers 104-86 at Staples Center. The first official home game for the Clippers in this matchup, in this freeway series, essentially. And this was kind of an irrelevant game. It was the first time that these two teams have met since opening night, which was a meaningless game. Clippers won 116-109. And to be honest, this game was kind of irrelevant too. The Lakers were totally outmanned, playing without LeBron, playing without Anthony Davis. Yet they actually held the Clippers to one of their lower scoring totals of the season, 104 points, which is pretty impressive when you think about the fact that they were without not only their two best offensive players, but statistically their two best defensive players as well. In fact, LeBron is one of the best defensive players, had been one of the best defensive players in the NBA. So it was kind of irrelevant, this game. But I will say this. I've never been one to always measure a team's success based purely on wins and losses. I've never really looked at that because I don't think that it is an accurate portrayal, oftentimes depiction of an entire game. I think that there are a lot of elements in a basketball game that can affect the outcome, and it's not just as simple as did you win the game, did you lose the game. But when I look at this Lakers team, because there's always something, you can always take away something from every game. You can always take away something. And for the Lakers, their biggest Achilles heel last year and in the past several years has been their depth. And all we were hearing about this offseason was that they had patched that up, that they had addressed those depth issues in the offseason. And now we were finally getting a chance to see how this depth would actually play out. How would these role players, these ancillary pieces that were supposed to complement LeBron and AD, when it's just them, how would they play? How consistently would they play? And that's the problem. That is always the problem, is the inconsistencies. Because when you look at what happened yesterday, it's not just that the Lakers lost the Clippers, that they were overmanned. I don't care about the outcome. And quite frankly, the Clippers probably don't care that much either. But what is noteworthy is the inconsistency on the Lakers side of the basketball. When you are Dennis Schroeder and you reject a 4-year, $84 million offer, which would pay you an annual salary of $21 million a year because you think you're worth more. When you go 3 for 12 and score 8 points, how does that justify that? You're Kyle Kuzma. You just dropped 30 points against the Sacramento Kings two nights ago, and now you come back with an absolute dud, 6 points on like 2 for 12 shooting, 2 for 10 shooting, 6 points. Kyle Kuzma is the ultimate Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character, which is why he got paid a reasonable, modest 40-year deal over 4 years, but nothing like some of his contemporaries like Jason Tatum, like Brandon Ingram, because he's not consistent enough. KCP, just 9 points, 30% shooting. Marc Gasol had a decent game, 11 points. The only consistent players for the Lakers yesterday were Montrezl Harrell, 19 points and 6 rebounds, and Talen Horton-Tucker, 16 points and 5 rebounds on 50% shooting, above 50% shooting for both of those guys. But that's what's noteworthy is when you're NBA players and every single night you can't give the same type of production. That's what makes you a role player. That's why you are considered an ancillary piece, because you cannot play consistently enough. And say what you want about Kawhi and Paul George, especially in the postseason. In the regular season, they step up and they are absolutely elite and consistent in the regular season. But so only one starter for the Lakers scored in double digits. That was Marc Gasol, who was actually irked by Andre Drummond being signed by the team. And of course, this has kind of been the Lakers' mantra this entire season. Let's just have all the best players sit down with injuries. Andre Drummond was out with a big toe, lost his toenail a couple days ago in his debut for the Lakers. For the Clippers, however, what was Actually, I think an important takeaway is the impact of Rajon Rondo. Sure, the stats don't jump out, and I don't want to overblow his debut with the Lakers, with the Clippers rather. Just 2 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists, 4 turnovers in 13 minutes. But you could see the pace of the game change for the Clippers. They felt much more confident and comfortable with Paul George out there. You felt like there was someone who was actually orchestrating an offense and just kind of inherently plays with a certain pace that just changes the flow and the rhythm of the game. Again, it was just 13 minutes, very small sample size. He's still working his way back from injury, trying to build up his stamina. And it was something that Paul George and a bunch of other Clippers players already acknowledged and praised him for after just one game. Is they've kind of already given him free access and total authority to hold guys accountable, which was the Clippers' biggest issue yesterday. And we saw even prior to the game in an interview that Rondo did with Rachel Nichols, is he was pretty open and said, listen, this is a championship or bust season, and they need someone who is truly going to hold their feet to the fire. And again, it's just one game, but I do like the changed mindset of this Clippers team with Rajon Rondo. That's why they traded him for Lou Williams, because of the impact that they thought he would have on the locker room and especially come postseason time. And I think that, again, the stats aren't going to jump out, especially yesterday, where he had more turnovers than assists and rebounds combined. But I just think that he plays with a different flow, a different energy that the Clippers were kind of lacking before, especially someone they can just give the ball to and say, hey, engineer some possessions for us, orchestrate the offense. And I just liked that additional aspect that he provided. And then they signed DeMarcus Cousins yesterday. I don't think he's going to have a huge impact. I think he'll have a minimal impact. He'll be a liability defensively, but DeMarcus Cousins can give you 10 to 12 minutes. He's an offensive threat in the post. He's a big body. So for a team that kind of lacks size and lacks depth at the center position, he can probably spell Ivica Zubats from time to time. So I actually kind of like that move. Again, not a huge move if you're the Clippers, but still a noteworthy one nonetheless.